Global happenings today. We communicate, we analyze global news. Stay tuned. To global happenings today, we have a trending news here for you. The headline of the news reads: VPOsinbajo governors and their deputies given 7 days ultimatum. But before we continue with details of the news and further analysis, we'd like to encourage you to please subscribe to our channel by clicking on the red subscribe button and also on the bell icon so that you can get notification anytime we publish videos on YouTube. The President Muhammadu Buhari, Vice President VPOsinbajo, governors and their deputies have been advised and urged to publish details of their asset in the next 7 days. This ultimatum came from the Socio-Economic Right and Accountability Project, Serap. Invoking the Freedom of Information request, the group said, and I quote, "The summary of assets to be disclosed include, where applicable, the following: savings and other liquid assets, all immovable property and shares and action in any private and public companies, properties purchased by way of tender from any public law entity, and information about businesses owned." In the FOI request dated 3rd January 2020 and signed by the Serap Deputy Director Kolawole Oluwadare, the organization said, and I quote, "The Constitution of Nigeria 1999 has amended the FOI Act and African Charter on Human and People's Rights, which is part of our laws, read together, imposes transparency obligation on all public officials to publicly disclose information concerning their asset declaration submitted to CCB and to clarify any updated review of such asset." Serap also said that the non-public disclosure by public officials of their summary of assets seriously undermine the effectiveness and integrity of the constitutional and statutory obligation to submit asset declaration, especially given that declarations are designed to curb grand corruption. The non-disclosure of assets also undermines the authority of the CCB and weakens the public trust in the asset declaration regime. In a specific FOI request to President Buhari, Serap noted his public promise to make specific details of his asset public and urged you to consider their FOI request as a unique opportunity to fulfill the promise made to the Nigerian people. The various FOI, that's Freedom of Information requests, read in part, and I quote, "Our FOI request does not clash with the right to privacy and data protection. Both rights are not absolute and can be restricted provided there is a basis in law and legitimate public interest justifies the restriction. Prevention of grand corruption and exposing unexplained wealth of officials are serious and legitimate public interest. We would also like you to clarify if you have encouraged members of your cabinet to also submit their asset declaration to the CCB and to make such declaration public. If so, we would like you to provide information on the details of those that have made submission. We would also like you to clarify whether a declaration has been submitted as constitutionally and statutorily required, the date of any such submission, and if you have received any confirmation of the verification of your asset declaration by the CCB. The general public has a legitimate interest in ascertaining and scrutinizing the veracity, exactitude, and honesty of information contained in asset declarations submitted by public officers to the CCB. Without public disclosure of summary of assets, these would have no practical importance. Public disclosure of summary of assets submitted to the CCB would help uncover any irregularity and trigger further verification of declaration by the CCB and other anti-corruption agency. The information required is a summary of assets submitted to the CCB pursuant to constitutional and statutory provision. The issue of the asset declaration of persons holding public offices is one of the legitimate public office and concern, and serves the purpose of ensuring transparency in the exercise of public function. By Section 1 of the Freedom of Information Act, Serap is entitled as of right to request for or gain access to information, including information on the summary of the asset declaration submitted to CCB. By Section 4, subsection A of the FOI Act, when a person makes a request for information from a public official, institution or agency, the public official, institution or agency is meant to abide under a binding legal obligation to provide the applicant with the information requested for, except as otherwise provided by the Act, within 7 days after the application is received. That's the basis of the ultimatum that they have given to the presidency, the vice presidency, governors, and deputy governors. And this is really, really an important case that must be handled speedily if we must abide by the provision of the Constitution. Because, first of all, asset declaration was already stated in the 1979 Constitution. And in 1999 Constitution, as amended, it was clearly written that every public holder is expected to make sure that they declare their assets acquired before and while they were still in power. And all of this is contained in Section 52, 94, and 185 of the Constitution of Nigeria. Public office holders are expected to submit their asset declaration form to CCB. What's CCB? That's Code of Conduct Bureau, and they have a responsibility, and that responsibility is that after submission of that asset declaration form to CCB, that's Code of Conduct Bureau, after you submit it to them, they are now meant to investigate everything that you have put there on the asset declaration form, and also to prosecute non-compliance or false declaration of asset. And the prosecution is meant to take place in the Code of Conduct Tribunal. And it's also in their power, if they find out that you are guilty after you have submitted. I'm trying to tell you the reason why most of our public office holders are not ready to get the form and fill it. Because if you fill it, they'll carry out an investigation about everything that you have. And if after all their findings and verification, they come to realize that what you had presented to them is actually false or not in compliance based on the Constitution, they can tell you to vacate your seat. That's your current seat. They can disqualify you, and based on the veracity, that's the extent of your crime, they can go as far as disqualifying you from holding any public office for the next 10 years. And they also have the power to seize or forfeit any of those properties that you have. And that's why you're noticing that they are so scared. They don't want to come out openly and tell Nigerians this is what you have. And one of the things that Serap did, that's the NGO, what they did was when the issue of asset declaration was mentioned by the Code of Conduct Bureau, when they made mention of it, Serap now applied to them that based on FOI Act, that's Freedom of Information Act, that they are placing a request that all the asset declaration form made available to CCB must be made public, that every Nigerian have the right to see it, and that they are requesting that all the asset declaration form that have been submitted thus far must be made public by 7 days. And I don't know how the government is going to handle this, because the truth of the matter is this is enshrined in the Constitution, and it must be handled with all level of seriousness. Don't forget that the purpose of this asset declaration form is to help Nigeria, is to show the transparency and the accountability of those that we have brought in to rule us. That's the way to show, to also help to curb any form of corruption which they may likely get involved in. And this is a very serious case. I don't know how the president is going to respond to this, because it's going to cause a lot of issues right now. Most of the public office holders are so scared, because this thing even involves appointees. All the ministerial appointees, they are meant to do the same thing. all the public office holders are meant to do it. So right now, there's a lot of, I don't know how Buhari is going to handle this, because the only person that I can say has openly brought up his own was the case of Seyi Makinde of Oyo State, the governor of Oyo State, who showed Nigerians how much and what he is worth. There were a lot of questions during the verification. There were a lot of questions. We are yet to get full details of it.
The truth of the matter is, like my colleague rightly said, Seyi Makinde, before he became the governor, during the time he was sworn in, he declared his assets. And in 2015, when President Muhammadu Buhari was given the first his first tenure as the president of Nigeria in a democratic setting, he made mention of asset declaration. But along the line, I was so surprised. Nigerians didn't even pay much attention to it. He even went further to assure Nigerians that even if it means him slashing his salary, to make Nigeria function well, he would do just that. But along the line, I noticed no assets was declared, and now we keep hearing issues that after some time we got to hear that the daughter was into was one of the board in an NNPC of NNPC, Nigerian Scream Yield. I guess that's one of the reasons why they now felt if we are to declare asset now, and after our tenure asset again is being reviewed, it's going to be mind blowing for a regime that has been fighting corruption, and this slogan has always been corruption fighting, and all of a sudden we are seeing things like this. Yes, I'm not saying that it's not possible for those in the office to be able to acquire one or two assets after their tenure, because of course they get salaries, they get allowances and all that. They do one or two businesses along the line, but there's a level of asset acquisition you will have. You're asking a question mark. There will be a question mark in your life. Like, for instance, for someone who's a millionaire before entering into the office is now a trillionaire, you now ask the question: how, where, when, how did it come to pass? How come you had only maybe 2 houses in your hometown, maybe 1 in Abuja or Lagos, and all of a sudden you have houses scattered the whole globe, 15 in the UK and 10 all that? And that's what Nigerians are asking for. And I know most definitely they want to avoid this, because this is declaring your assets is as dangerous as saying. And that's where true integrity actually comes from. Really, if you are willing to declare your assets truly, then you are then telling Nigerians this is where to go. If you ask me, asset declaration should begin with the president. Tell us what you had before now. And I know if he does that, there's going to be a lot of screams online, because I know Nigerians will go and say, look, before he became the president, a lot of rumors were online that he couldn't afford to buy a presidential form, because then it was in millions of naira, nomination form. But a lot of supporters went ahead and did it for him. But that's actually not bad. These are allegations until well proven, and that can only be done when he declares his asset, and as much as those under his cabinet as well.
All right, thank you very much. One of the greatest challenge of this whole issue of asset declaration, most people believe that it's mainly been used in haunting the opposition leaders. That's those governors who came under the platform of PDP. Because before now, when we're talking about asset declaration, and for example, when the president declared his asset, Serap wrote to, I think that was in July or so, wrote to this man, that's to Code of Conduct Bureau, telling them that based on the FOI Act, that they are requesting that it should be made public for scrutiny by the public. And any way that we find that the verification by CCB is not accurate, Nigerians can still forge ahead and ask them, present how you actually verify this asset. We want to know. This man said this is the only thing he owns, but hey, we have information about him that he owns this, and he can even help in the investigation. But the challenge we have right now is the fact that these guys are accountable. They are not such an autonomous body that cannot be influenced. Whatever report they are going to be writing will still be back to the president. It still be going back to the president. So even if they are carrying out investigation, they had declined the FOI, the Freedom of Information request by Serap. They had declined it before. I don't know now if they have accepted. So even if the president fills his own and submit it to CCB, they may not want to disclose it for the public. And that is like it's against the Freedom of Information Act that Nigerians are depending on. So the challenge is it may be used in hunting, the asset declaration may be used in hunting the PDP guys. And secondly, it may be used also in kind of covering the other guys so that the public will not get to know how much they are. But we just believe that with the 7 days ultimatum given to them, that they will do something, owing to the fact that this is not just a personal request, but it is enshrined in the Constitution of Nigeria. That's where we're going to leave it. Go to our comment section. Let us interact. What do you think this will do in terms of curbing corruption and in terms of